Hello, good people. Welcome to Off the Deep End, a Deep Listens podcast where we explore role-playing video games in depth. My name is Jeff Rude, the host and the Nocturnus Opus 9 of this operation. Joining me, as always, the erstwhile fantasy impromptu, Braden, Arbitrary Water Redacted. Hello, Braden. Good evening.
Hello, Jeff.
Also joining us, as always, we have the Waltz of the Little Dog, Chris. Zombie Pie, Redacted. I forgot your screen name there for some reason. Hello, Chris.
Who are you? My name is Mono, and I am the Doodle King.
Name is Mono. Get it right or get his name out your mouth.
Joining us there, that mysterious voice you've heard, is our boss, the Chief Executive Officer of Off the Deep End, and indeed the entire Deep Listens enterprise. That is Gino, ThatPinguino, Grieco. Hello, Gino.
Hi. How's it going?
Great.
So this is what your show's like.
Yeah, it's run very differently, as you can tell. It doesn't resemble any other podcast content ever made. Totally, utterly unique. I guess the weird lunatic thing I do is I insist that we need to acknowledge the whole production history of every one of these damn games. And with that in mind, we're going to do what we always do and run down the really dry, exciting title information of this one. Today, on this episode, we're recording on the Weed Day, the 420 Day. Happy Drug Day, everyone.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
Drugs. Yeah. I was invited to smoke drugs. Instead, I'm recording this podcast. I, of course, mean legal drugs in the state I reside in.
Legal drugs in the state you reside in is a fairly short list, I understand. And apparently the state legislature there has a law that they passed where they legally can't even discuss legalizing certain substances now by state law, which is really cool. Mountain West, everyone, it's a cool place. Hey, on this episode, speaking of drugs, we'll be talking about Eternal Sonata, aka Trusty Bells, Chopin no Yume. It was originally developed by Tri Crescendo and published by Bandai Namco. This was a post-merger game for the Microsoft Xbox 360 on June 14th, 2007 in Japan. It was subsequently released in the USA and Europe, and indeed came out the following year on Sony's PlayStation 3, a competing console. So we're going to be talking a little bit about both of those, I suppose, here. Hey, if you find this to be a fun activity, listening to this show, listening to these lads, talking to these lads, and you'd like to be closer knit to us, if you would like to cleave more closely to the breast of the Deep Listens podcast network, you may do so with money. That's right. If you go to patreon.com/deeplistens, that is patreon.com/deeplistens, patreon.com/deeplistens, and kick in any dollar amount. I'm personally fond of $2. You know, like it's kind of like
it's 100% better.
But it's 100% better. You know, if everyone did that, we would be a lot closer to Jeff Karaoke. As it is, we are precipitously close to getting our 20th subscriber, which would compel us by heaven and earth and the laws of nature itself to play Unlimited Saga. Once we hit
Jeff,
that 20.
What comes after Unlimited Saga? What is the next torture game? We also have Gino here.
Well,
what would be a game that would be another extension goal?
I think we talked about it, and I suppose we could maybe divulge it here if we would like.
Yeah, sure.
I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, so I will put it out there.
Borderlands 2.
No, fuck you.
I'm going to kick him from the call. Our 30 sub mark game, if we get 30 subs, then I'll be a happy man, and we will also play Ultima 9. Last Ultima.
That's right, we did talk about this.
Yeah.
Is that the best Final Fantasy? Like, Final Fantasy 9 is the best?
It is exactly like that.
It's so good that they stopped making Ultima games. That's how good it was.
It is like the example of EA killing a franchise. Like, nothing has ever really been killed. Maybe SimCity. Like, that's, I think, the only one that has ever really come close in terms of, like, earth-salting events. Like, I don't think there'll be another SimCity game made for like another decade, probably. That last one came off so poorly, but the prototype for that was Ultima 9.
Ultima 9 killed the Ultima franchise. It killed Origin, It killed Richard Garriott giving a shit about making video games that wouldn't get him to space, at least. And it's basically like the beginning of the end for 99 CRPGs are still in a good place, but
Did it kill Richard Garriott's interest in video games, or was that tabula rasa?
Was he responsible for Epic Mickey?
No, you were
Warren
thinking
Spector.
of Warren Spector.
Another fine Texas institution, Warren Spector.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Warren Spector has a business acumen and also is willing to work reasonably well.
He's not making it an NFT-fueled MMO.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Sigh.
Which, by the way, Richard Garriott getting into NFTs, basically being like, what if the real money auction house from Diablo 3 was the game?
It worked so well the last time. We, would gently encourage you to check out patreon.com/deeplistens. You may also holler at us. We like comment sections. We, hey, if you're listening to us on a podcatcher of some sort and you wanted to dump a review, we would definitely appreciate that. The correct number of stars, I believe, is 5. Most places.
It's the only one that works.
Yeah. Honestly, I'd take a 4. I ain't proud, but
No, I don't. I think the 4 button's broken.
Oh,
5's the only one.
well, you heard it from Gino right there. Then the 5 button's the only one that works. So go ahead and give that a consideration. If you would like to holler at me or indeed Gino directly about this sort of shenanigans we're engaging in, you may do so at inquiries@deep.lol. That is inquiries@deep.lol. There's a good chance we'll read the whole thing, pretty much verbatim. You might be our next Joe. We would love another Joe.
We'd love another Joe. We would love that the next person who tries to reach out to us or drop comments is a Joe. Give us a Joe, please.
Yeah. So give us more bad.
We love enthusiasm.
I do love enthusiasm. I would like to say, but I can't because I'm an honest man, that I have a lot of enthusiasm for Eternal Sonata, but I'm going to be honest, it became an uphill battle for me at a certain point.
Okay, let's do what we always do. Raise your hand. This is a podcast. Raise your hand if you finished the game.
I did not finish.
I have my hand up.
Yeah.
How far into... Do I have to have killed the final boss?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't even kill the penultimate boss, Gino. I saw your stream.
Yeah, you were at the second to the last boss. That wasn't even the last boss
fake
of the
gamer
game.
girl.
There's a boss after that dude.
How can you guys record a podcast about Eternal Sonata if you haven't finished the post-game Super Dungeon boss and resurrected Clavis?
I'm sorry,
and
but
looked at her
real
entire
Eternal Sonata
moveset?
alpha gamers, they complete New Game Plus. Okay, Encore mode is the only mode that I know.
grind set no Yume.
God. Okay, here's the deal.
No.
If this Patreon will start producing for me, not collectively, but just for me, literally dollar for dollar the same amount I get paid on a monthly basis, then I will play these games to completion. But only then. Otherwise, I literally do not have time.
Yes.
So
charity season is over.
Yeah.
The Giant Bomb Community Endurance Run was a big success. It is now the age of fuck you, pay me.
It's come back. Full circle.
Come back.
I am about to be a double income household for the first time in many years, and I've got to tell you, that's going to be cool. But anyway, I did not finish this game. I got to, I'm going to say, the halfway point, and I said, you know what? There's a YouTube version of this game that gets rid of the game part that is probably going to be more enjoyable for me. And that's what I did. And I'm proud to admit that right now.
I played 20 hours of this video game and said, well, I saw Gino play the rest. This is good enough.
Yeah, I can say with some certainty, I don't think my mind is going to be changed either for better or worse.
We are invoking Wolpaw's Law.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't think that the difference between you loving this game or being kind of like, wow, this story's great, but the gameplay sucks, was beating two extra bosses?
Okay, to my defense, what is
You were playing on 360. That's your
yes.
defense.
So first 360. Second, this game came out in 2007, and 2007, Chris Zombie Pie Redacted was willing to deal with a lot of this bullshit more so than the version of me today. But I don't know. It's
as we said on Deep Listens, the problem with this game is not that it is bad necessarily.
And
it
boy,
is that
howdy, the end of this game is a work of art.
Indeed.
It is, but the thing is about Eternal Sonata, the problem I find is that there are a bunch of good to great ideas, let's say, good to great ideas, and they miss on many of those gameplay ideas by like 10 degrees left, 10 degrees right on each of them, and it adds up to missing almost entirely.
I think that you made a pretty good point because this came out in relative shocking proximity of FF13, right? And I think you pointed out that if you gave Eternal Sonata an extra year and another $1 million, you can envision Eternal Sonata being a significantly better game.
Yes.
If you were to give $1 million to Final Fantasy 13 in another year, I don't think it would be a better game.
I mean, they gave it a decade more and made 2 other FF13 games. And by the end, they made a tolerable one. But,
and I think that's where we normally go with our discussions about, let's talk about the developer. Like, part of me wants to give them a mulligan just because, this is the first full-on project that they ever made.
Yeah.
And if they had continued to make full-fledged products and this was like their first go or their first bite at this apple, I would say it's a pretty admirable first go. Like, starting your first full production in the 360 PS3 era, not the easiest point to start at all.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
And it's a strange portfolio. So I guess to maybe I want to talk about this production part of this a little bit too, because it's kind of what we got. And we have the luxury of that because there was a prior episode recorded about this that I was not able to appear on for returning from the Midwest on a plane reasons. But basically, you've kind of echoed the conclusions that you guys came to in that last pod in Gino's talking about, like, as you said, it's like a couple rounding errors that just, like, added up over time to the point where it's like, oh, now we're in, like, a geometrically wrong, like, ballpark here of where this ought to have been, perhaps.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments when I was playing this game where I thought, a more experienced developer would not choose this camera angle. They would probably have, instead of having the camera pan this way or be triggered when you hit the edge of the screen, they would pan further back and then have the camera track with your character instead of tracking in the environment. Or, when you're in combat, instead of there being 3 different cameras to choose from, they would probably, QA it until they found a single camera angle that probably worked. Or dynamically
targeting or something. But, they made mistakes that are normal mistakes for a video game developer doing this on their own the first time.
Yeah, totally. And it just adds up to being about how far into the game, Jeff, since you are the person who did not participate in the first show, how far in did you start feeling fatigue at the combat of Eternal Sonata?
If I'm perfectly honest, it was that first dungeon.
The forest or the big underground?
The underground environment. The forest was, I'm still settling in. The dungeon is where they start really stacking encounters in a way, which more power to them. They're in the world, so they are avoidable, I suppose, to an extent. But I'm of the mind frame that if they're in the game, they're probably meant to be there. So I tend to take every encounter I can get to farm that sweet experience. But there was a point, even in that first main dungeon, like you said, in that underground environment, which is, we'll talk about the dungeon design here in a while, but just kind of, let's say, all dungeon and a lot of video game design you can picture in terms of, like, network maps. Like, topographically, it's like nodes where things happen and the vectors between them. And those vectors are the boring part. Final Fantasy 13 is basically a game kind of made out of those vectors, if you will. And the dungeons, a lot of them in this game, are very vector-heavy. And those vectors are very encounter-heavy. And when they aren't encounter-heavy, they're just kind of barren, empty not particularly interesting environments that you're walking through a lot of the time.
Sometimes there's a side path, and there's a chest at the end of the side path, and like 5 monsters you go through.
It has very baby's first dungeon. They're functional. I would say that they're better dungeons than something like the first crack at Final Fantasy, or like really the first couple, right? Sort of mazes, basically, with blind alleys and shit. But they feel like a first crack at making video game dungeons, which they kind of were. If you look back at the Tricrescendo development catalog, which stretches back to sound development on Valkyrie Profile, and then goes to sound development on, and then sound development, and then sound development. They co-developed not just sound, but apparently co-developed outright the 2 Button Kaitos games. And then this was their first solo work. So I've not played a Button Kaitos, but I'm curious if the dungeons in those games are of a similar cloth as this. Those have got Monolith Soft on them as well.
I wouldn't say they are, but only because I would say that the dungeons in Button Kaitos are a bit on the basic side. They're smaller too, but only because the dungeons in Button Kaitos need to service a card-based combat system, and as a result, you have to make a compromise there.
Yeah.
In order to, how do you make this work with the standard features of a JRPG if you're going to go card combat?
I mean, and the thing about the combat in this game is I think they do a couple things that are, again, it's rounding errors, right? The mode at which they kind of, I guess naturally or artificially, depending how you want to phrase it, make the game a little more complicated is actually kind of clever, and you can opt into it, because like you start with this, basically you have like infinite time pause to like consider your moves, and then there's like a set chunk of time to execute those moves in, and as you push through the game you unlock new, for lack of a better word, like modes of combat where that thinking time is like suddenly curtailed quite a bit, and that action time is curtailed, but in exchange they offer you other shit.
Like, how distinctly some of the characters play, like, that's a great idea. It's a cool idea that these characters play significantly different from one another.
Beat is a ranged character, Viola's ranged with an aiming mechanic, you've got a few melee characters, some of them magic heavy.
Where this is obviously their first game starts to kick in, is like the balance for some of these characters is completely bad. There are characters who are just completely busted. There are characters who are just totally useless almost immediately, and for as long as you have them. Fucking jazz. Then you got a character like Viola, who's literally busted once you figure out how she works.
She's one of the most busted things I've seen in a game in a little while. She's like a one-person wrecking crew. The game basically turns into...
her and Salsa.
There's an episode of Hey Arnold where there's a kid named Tucker, and they're playing football, and the football coach is Tucker's dad, and he's like, all right, kids, the name of the game is Tucker. We're all going to protect Tucker, and the goal is to get the ball to Tucker. And that's kind of just what this game turns into. It's just Viola. Like, if you give Viola some of the readily available accessories that just make her run a wee bit faster so she can make distance, she becomes a murder machine. And basically... The game just turns into get that combo chain up, get her far away, because every arrow she shoots from a distance like quadratically increases in damage. Her like ults or whatever you call them are quite good, and then that's like, okay, but like who's gonna heal? Oh, it's okay, she does that too.
Yeah,
and it's a mass heal.
And
she is the first character to get an AoE heal,
like for everyone,
and she is a ridiculous damage dealer, and she's ranged.
So the problem I have with Viola... So Viola's good. Obviously, she deals a lot of damage. She was in my party the whole time. She has arrow drop. She is the only character where physics apply.
Yes, I was going to say, it's one of the rounding errors of this, and you said Z-targeting earlier, but every time you, like, alright, it's Viola's turn to start getting ahead in this fight, and then it's like, for some reason... Like, you've got to kind of line up shots anyway, so if she's facing away from the enemies, you need to literally turn her around awkwardly, like a dog humping a beach ball.
She will melee attack air. She will melee attack air if you are not looking at an enemy at distance.
And then that time it takes for her to, like, L2 onto an enemy is not inconsiderable, and then every time you do that and she misses a shot, it is actually the worst feeling in the world. It is the feeling of wasted video game time, which is the worst thing you can do in a video game, is make a time feel like it is wasted.
I like when there are two characters that you want to shoot at. One of them is further back, so that's what you actually want to target. But because there are two enemies near each other, the game's like, you must mean the one in front. And it's like, no, game, don't you know how your mechanic works? I want the one in back. So now it is zoomed in on the wrong enemy, so I have to manually move to the other enemy, and then that uses up about half of my time. I might get one arrow off instead of 5, because the game just decides I want to lock onto the wrong character. Or, with Viola, it's very fun when characters assume their blocking pose or get up from being knocked down, because their hitbox changes when they crouch. And then, or enemies that fly. If your arrow goes low on them, it misses too. So anything with a weird hitbox, anything that moves, like there was an enemy that jumps up and down. If it moves, it just makes Viola much worse. Not because you're using her wrong, but because the game is not up to a first-person aiming mechanic, really.
I liked how maybe this is kind of clever that they hid this, I suppose. But when I first started using her, I didn't realize that you could just buffer arrow shots, basically. So I thought it was basically, I'm gonna fire and then fire and then fire, and it's like, God, I'm only getting 2 of these off. This character seems like she might kind of suck. And then in the course of, I don't remember what YouTube clip I watched, but I was watching something for some reason, and I saw someone use Viola and just go got 6 shots off in a turn. I was like, what the fuck? Booted the game up again, started playing, and I was like, oh, you can just mash A, just use this entire time bar, literally, it's like a Hungarian bow expert on the back of a horse.
You can pull off 4 or 5 shots, and even at low levels, those are doing thousands of damage if you're far away.
Yeah. She seems crazy in a fun way. She's, I think, the most fun character that I discovered. I did not get into salsa, at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Salsa's just, she's a melee character with dual wielding, so she gets multiple hits when she hits, and she eventually gets really just powerful specials.
She gets really weird specials that, she does a lot of debuffing that just can,
I can see that being useful.
Really helpful. She also does dark magic.
I was oddly fond of Jazz, I guess, because he would get multiple hits in on his melee.
That's nice.
Yeah. He's a little slow, but he has the, classic slow but hard trade-off.
Anyways, you
just attacks hit twice.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I kind of realized over the course of playing more since the last time I recorded, literally 2 fucking months ago, is, the way they are trying to balance the characters is, some characters can do more hits to build up the combo faster, but some characters have really good magic, and some characters have good basic attacks, but it's one of those, this was nice in a design doc sort of things, but in practice, there are certain characters that are just kind of trash against enemies that have high defense.
This also just gets to the point of that Gino brought up whenever he was streaming the game. This game has when you start a battle, so many different moving parts. So all of the different mechanics just related to combat. So you've got a surprise attack concept, you've got a light and dark system, you have a counter system, you have tactical time, you've got an action gauge, you have the next indicator, you have status effects, you can flee the battle. Then you have the advanced techniques, remember. You have the echoes, you have your secondary special attacks, again, counter attacks. You have to worry about your harmony change, and then you also need to worry about your moving commands or your movement-based commands that are specific to characters. Which you get some of these things, we need to talk about this part, by leveling up your party.
Yes, which is basically at fixed intervals throughout the game.
By just progressing the story, you get certain abilities. And, some things now your characters get their second special attack. It's okay, that makes perfect sense. Oh, you can, but you're level 4 with your party. Now you can counterattack. It's the fuck, what? How is this something that makes sense to wait this long to give it to me?
Yeah.
I mean,
Once
my
again,
bigger
I
concern.
understand it in concept, in like, oh, we're going to keep adding, trying to mix up the battle system by adding new mechanics, but they should give you those mechanics earlier because it's
enemies even counterattack you before you get the ability to counterattack. Like, that's the part that I start to get angry at the game in
the
some
part
way.
that bugs me more is the fact that it's all a trade-off. Like, you can turn on these additional quote unquote additional abilities, the ability to counterattack, harmony chains, access to your second skill, and then always it comes with, and now you don't have as much time to figure out where the hell you are on the map.
It becomes weirdly zero-sum, right?
And now you don't know whose turn is next because our UI is not good. Now your character moves twice as fast, but we're giving you half as much time. And it's like, wait, what? Why is it a trade-off? Why wouldn't you just give me the mechanics?
Why aren't the characters just getting better? Like, that's the whole point of the RPG. The numbers go up.
It's
like,
totally fine. You could just make them faster. I'm not going to be mad. And the implication that you can turn these off because it's a trade-off, the game's like, oh, do you want to go back to level 1? Well, okay, I mean, if I did that, then my characters would not have access to harmony chains, counterattacking, they'd move at half speed.
Yeah.
Wouldn't I just get worked by every boss because they expect you to have those turned on? Yeah, the answer is yes. You will get just worked by all the bosses.
And again, I got to the halfway point of this game, and they hadn't given me the counterattack ability, which is crazy, crazy late because it's enough to learn the... And this is a thing you talked about in the initial episode, which I can't emphasize enough. You should go listen to that. Probably should have led with that before I even started this episode. This is a companion piece to that. You should go listen to that first and then come back here. So I'm going to pause this right now, and then you go do that, and then come right back, okay? The timing window for the guard in this game is kind of a bastard.
It's incredibly tight.
I started playing Tales of Vesperia, in the course of playing this, and, I've played a lot of Virtua Fighter. I generally don't like games with a guard button. I like a game that is a hit back to block. I like a Tekken. I like a Street Fighter. So, it's enough for me that there's a damn guard button anyway, if I'm honest. I kind of just let me hit back. That doesn't really work here, but anyway. It's not just that, it's also timing-based, so you get these little prompts to do that. And, Gino, you were saying, if you were using any sort of capture equipment that added any sort of, delay in that chain, it became, nigh on impossible for the windows they wanted.
So, what I learned was, at first, I was having trouble because the counter or block indicator will kind of appear over your character, but there is more UI on the screen and the camera is not especially good. So you can have situations where your character is kind of barely on the screen, so the counter indicator or the block indicator is really awkwardly placed, or it's overlapping with other UI. So that's what I was looking for at first, and when I did that, just knowing where the button was, because, some of these characters, they do feigns before they attack. They will do a little dance and then they swing.
Right.
Some characters you need to mash the button immediately. So you basically need to be always on your toes to hit the button. So at first I was getting just completely destroyed because I was waiting for animations, waiting for the timing, waiting for the button to show up. Because if you hit the button early, you also just whiff the block entirely and you will take full damage. And the difference between full damage and block damage is 10 times as much damage in a lot of cases. So once I realized that actually on the indicator for what the buttons do on the bottom of the screen, so some of the buttons are a little context sensitive, they will prompt you on that little button, that circle or X or B or A, depending on your which controller you're using. Yeah. It will tell you, okay, now it's time to block. And when that came up, once I realized I didn't have to stare at anything except that little section of the screen, it became almost like Rock Band, where you're watching the buttons come, the buttons are coming down the lane. There might be pyrotechnics and singing and a dragon playing guitar behind you, but fuck if I would know. All I ever see is the lane and the very bottom of the lane. And the game became like that, which for a JRPG is kind of a bummer that I'm not watching the animations really when I'm on defense.
The thing I started doing was just listening for the sound cue.
Right.
became more useful.
The lag for me.
Yeah.
The lag for me was not.
I relied on sound
possible.
cues as well.
Yeah. I played an actual rhythm game, whatever the hell you're talking about. No, yeah, I agree though. It is visually for a game that is like this is not an ugly game, but its presentation is like fairly simple versus something like an actual Monolith Soft game. I guess they're kind of being dragged right now for how cluttered their UI gets. This is not necessarily that bad, but
no, it's just that they don't use the real estate well.
No, they do not. And again, I think some of that might just be down to experience, but
yeah, and I also should call out, like, with the blocking. When we recorded the last show, I don't believe we had unlocked counterattacks at that point. Counterattacks are on X or A. Blocking is on circle or B. Mm-hmm. If you are planning on blocking your opponent's attacks, you are hovering your finger over the circle button at almost all times, because block is the primary thing that you want to do. It's available for every enemy attack. Counterattack's a special occasion when that happens. If you hit a counterattack, Jeff, you take no damage at all, and your opponent, you get a free second to wail on your opponent. Mm. If you miss that, you take full damage, just like with a block. If you hit a block at a time when you're presented a counter, you'll just block, but now you are still subject to your enemy's entire turn. So, like, the upside of a counterattack is so significant that it just puts this real pressure on you to hit it when it's there. And the later bosses and later battles, I think, are really balanced with the idea that you're hitting those. And it's odd to me in a game where the block button, the window's like, I mean, it's not a 1 frame, but it might be 10. It's not a long window. Mm-hmm. And like, the trade-off, it's not even risk reward. It's like, did you have your finger over the right button because you don't have the time to move your finger?
It's an awful lot that it is asking of you early on in the game to do that.
Hey, Braden, how do you think this game compares to some of the other stuff we've played, especially considering we've played some really cluttered, weirdly obtuse games? Because I've been thinking about some of the CRPGs that we've played.
I feel like the comparison is, this is like 3 steps removed from, let's say, the Tri-Ace games of note, or the
Star Ocean.
Yes, the Star Ocean or the Tales of games. But the thing that I have come to over and over and over again with this game is, like, this is like the perfect poster child for how badly the genre suffered during the early HD era. But as far as systemic clonk, I think it's one of those things where there are a lot of ideas and a lot of mechanics, and none of them are elegantly intertwined.
Would you rather play this game or Enchanted Arms? There's no problematic homophobic stereotype.
There's not a flamboyantly gay character straight out of a 90s sitcom.
Yeah, so mechanically we've kind of talked about this. I guess
mechanically, every time I play this game, it makes me look at the stack of PS3 games I now have on this desk, and makes me kind of yearn for this copy of Tales of Grace's F.
Folklore.
This copy of Folklore.
Hell yeah, we've all gotten the sickness.
This game made me, I'm glad you brought it up, this game made me think about an era and a style of JRPG that is basically fucking dead. Like, they don't make these types of JRPGs, and if they do, they've got, they're digital. They're like small indie titles. Like,
they come out on the Switch for $20.
They come out on the Switch. Like, this reminds me of, like, the glory days of Game Arts, Anakemia, fucking all of those dot hack games. Just like these high concept, under budget, workman-like JRPGs that came out in between the major Dragon Quests, the major Final Fantasies.
Yeah, they just
dumped the major Persona games, and then they just like, okay, we're gonna come out on June 15th because nothing comes out in summer.
Except instead of just like a generic story about a little wizard who's on a quest, it's a story about Friedrich Chopin's dying
and see,
brain.
This is the part where we got to get back to it. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in.
Yeah, so
before we move on.
Oh, go ahead.
I want to say they still make those games.
Sure,
Dude,
but
the
they're like
the Atelier
okay.
games.
Sure.
If you want a thick anime alchemist girl.
Okay, a bag of Labyrinth.
If you want the Neptunia girls to team up with the Senran Kagura girls and get all those dirty fucking foreign games out of the glorious nation of Japan, which is really the premise for that game, that exists.
Not for the reasons Gino said, but some of this bold B-tier budget spirit lives on in the Tales series. Those are like maybe the kings of that. They are... Like, I think I have it in my heart to really love those games, but every couple of years they really, I think, pour time and resources into one of them, and then they produce 2 or 3 very workmanlike entries in that series, the Caravan games, or whatever the hell they describe them as. I think those really carry a lot of that water. I mean, whatever, Square Enix has gotten into this game as well, like, and they kind of always have been. Like, World of Final Fantasy, the Type 0 HD port, Bravely freaking Default. Sega's got Seventh Dragon.
Tokyo RPG Factory makes.
Like, even, Falcom with the Tokyo Xanadu stuff. Like, games that are well critically received by RPG Fan and a handful of other websites, and are otherwise dragged down by people who are like, oh my god, it is not a Final Fantasy title. Get it out of here.
This Shin Megami Tensei game doesn't have Persona in it at all.
This is way too hard. The spirit of this game, the early PS360 720p spirit of this game.
You remember that weird time when Microsoft was like literally spending millions of dollars to get JRPG developers to finally make an Xbox game?
And this doesn't even really feel like that. Like, I feel like that really was Vesperia, was like the real statement for that.
Vesperia, the Mistwalker titles.
Blue Dragon.
Enchanted Arms.
Your Enchanted Arms.
Dragon.
And that one novel game.
And they only got a year's worth of exclusivity, too.
Yeah, that's the crazy... So, I want to talk about two things.
Let's talk about the different versions of this
game. We have to talk about basically the back half of this game's story, which is to say the ending, but I want to talk about the version thing, too. So, this is not a backwards compatible game on the original Xbox, which is a shame on the original Xbox. On the current Xbox offering, the Series, they have a surprising number of JRPGs from the 360 area that are... This is not one of them. However...
How dare that?
This is one of a strange selection of games that are available digitally still on the 360 marketplace that did not make that back compat list. So, if you want to play this game for whatever reason, after we spent literally 2 episodes of Deep Listens content kind of being like, it's $15 on a 360 right now, which is kind of nuts. Like, I don't know what the physical price of this is. I can't imagine it's much more than that, but $15 is...
It's not much more. It's like $20.
It was about $25 for my PS3 copy.
Yeah, like, $15 is not a terrible price for this, because this is not a terrible game. Like, I think it is interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, all that we are dragging it for its kind of off combat, it makes up for it in story.
Yes.
In
panache. And we are going to talk about that.
The way you said it in the Discord, Gino, was like every time there's a dungeon, the game gets worse. Every time there's a cutscene, the game gets way better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is very Larry David.
The gameplay is constantly between you and just the most bonkers, off-the-wall dialogue you've ever heard, read by professional voice actors of the 2000s, who you will know from every anime that came out in the 2000s.
And half of the video games.
As soon as Beat started talking and Toboe's voice from Wolf's Rain started coming out of his little mouth, my wife got interested in this game suddenly. She's like, that's fucking Toboe. He's like, well, maybe we could tell the king that he shouldn't tax all the medicine. I was like, oh, Toboe. And like,
why does he keep taxing the food and making the medicine very cheap?
And they're like, you dumb child. This child doesn't understand tax policy. What a dipshit. Like, It's ridiculous. Yeah.
He's such a fucking dumb kid.
Every time they open their mouths and they expound on the nature of life, love, and taxes and upper class, lower class conflict, it's incredible because it's like someone read a book on any given topic. And I shouldn't say a book. I should say a chapter of a book on any given topic.
Or they spark noted it. That's how surface level it is.
Subject matter aside, even some of the subject matter kind of applies, and delivery aside, which is to say this game has terrible direction, it's kind of like a Kojima game. Because he's a very Sparks Notes guy. Like, he's very, like... I read a thing about drug tax policy, right?
Yes. It is not like, let me explain nuclear,
deterrence
theory to you, Chopin. It's a lot of, like,
private military companies, they're a threat. I'm going to make a video game about it.
Well, the reason they don't tax the mineral powder is because... they want people to use it.
There's just
because they'll feel better.
I see. Character nods.
Feel better. I think that they want them to have the mineral powder so they can be turned into super soldiers. Hell yeah!
It really does turn into Kojima shit. We have to pause this plot start now because before we really get into that, which is to say, talk about the end of this game, I want to talk about the version stuff a little bit more because it sounds like me and ZP did the 360 version.
We had an okay time.
It's an okay time. Children. Like, it is ultimately kind of a cakewalk. Like, the worst thing that would happen to me is Viola would whiff on a couple bow shots.
See, and so when I played this game, when I played it for the first time, and when I played it this time, I actually ended up listening to our podcast about Quest 64, and the term, this is a game for babies, was applied to Quest 64. For the version that we played, like, this game, the 360 version... I will clarify. This game is like one or two design choices away from being like a game I could give a kid.
Yeah.
Because the combat is very straightforward. If you use your special abilities, basically everything dies. There are a handful of really difficult boss encounters. That part is the same across all versions. But like the characters gain new abilities almost like every 5 or 10 levels. Like there's a real good sense of progression. The problem is that, and we've already talked about it, there's no need to hash it out, like, there's so little enemy variety in the actual dungeons, and every dungeon is, like, 2 or 3 levels too long to where I couldn't give this to a kid.
Every single dungeon is 6 screens too long for how long any given round of combat takes. Because here's the thing, not to just jump back into talking about combat, but... since the PS3 version, the enemies have higher stats, I guess, that are similar to the 360's Encore mode difficulty.
Yeah, New Game Plus.
And you get like half as much experience and half as much money.
See, and that was the thing about the 360 version. The 360 version, like, getting the abilities, like, I found a listing, like, it's like, wow, why are you guys saying that your version's so much harder? Because I have to get to level 50, and you get this at level 27. Then I saw, oh, wait, you guys are getting, like, literally half the experience points that I got, so therefore I'm actually getting there quicker.
So they did a few things. They give you about half as much XP and money in the PS3 version. The enemies have higher stats, and they also pushed the level thresholds for certain abilities up. So, like, you actually you're leveling faster, you're getting abilities faster, and the enemies are easier. It's a completely different balance.
But Gino, there are special characters that are exclusive to your version. You get Serenade and Crescendo, and I didn't.
Oh, wow. What good characters Serenade and Crescendo are. I mean, Serenade's actually useful, but like that's not the thing. Like if
they are not on the same level as Flynn and Patty in the PS3 version of Vesperia,
where Patty was actually on the disc and you could like find her code. We don't need to get into that.
We don't need to get into that. But
it got to the point with my game where if I could just get all of the random encounters, especially just to pool up in one spot, and I could get like Jazz or Salsa or anyone that does an AoE attack, like did one of like those spinning fist attacks with Jazz, like everything died. Everything was just dead.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I was always one button press away from dying because if you miss a block, sometimes the attack strings will start with one attack, and if you block it, you're good. Sometimes if you whiff that block, you are now eating the whole combo. But if you block the first attack, you then have to proceed to block 4 more attacks. So you need one whiff to get fucked, or 5 perfect blocks.
And these are like a handful of frames level of blocks.
Yeah. And the anime, it's not like the timing on them gets different, right? So like a 5-hit combo is not just like bop 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 bop. It could be like bop 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 bop. So you have to like pretty much memorize every attack sequence. This is the same on the 360, by the way. This blocking problem.
Oh, it's the same, but it's just the consequences are worse. Like you have more leeway.
Sure, eat a lot of damage.
But when you factor in, as you said, the 360 difficulty and then the fairly simple, at least, conveyance of a story, my spouse just straight up asked like if this was a game for children. Which, like, as you said, Chris, like I think it's like kind of almost there, but then
it's almost.
It reminds me of the god damn it, the Half in the Bag people, the Red Letter Media.
Yeah,
they did their episode 1 thing where it's like, a children's movie, and it starts with Trade Federation policy discussions.
Yeah,
there's just like 15-minute sequences of people talking about like negotiating like trade, and it's like, I don't know, man. Like this seems like a really weird crease they were going for.
That's the thing is like it does feel like it's almost meant for kids because there's so much spent in teaching you music and music conventions and like knowledge, and we'll talk about the slideshows again.
People who made this game were music nerds.
Yes,
yeah,
clearly.
It feels like that, but then also it's like, why is the gameplay so fiddly? Why does it punish you so explicitly if you get off a sequence even 1 iota?
Yeah,
and why is everything so long?
Your question, Jeff, that your significant other asked, like, is this game for children?
Yeah.
That was what many of the reviews said about this game. It was too easy. It was too straightforward. The mechanics weren't dense enough. And between the 360 and PS3 versions, because it is easy to slide down the experience and the money output and slide up the stats.
Yeah.
That's what they did. They adjusted it to make it more difficult without making any of it more interesting.
Yeah.
And that just means the combat lasts longer because you are doing less damage to tougher enemies.
Yeah. It's the thing they do in like hero modes of like Zelda games, which makes them ultimately like really kind of unsatisfying to me as someone who thinks those games can be kind of easy and would like them to push back a little harder. Let's just scale the damage 100% on the enemy side and then like scale the damage negative 100% on your side, basically. So just like everything sucks forever.
Now everything takes forever because you're not dealing enough damage, and also it's high risk at all times. And that's it's high leverage. It takes the combat that is not especially interesting, and it just makes it high leverage, so you have to restart more. And that's just not, it's not a great formula. Is it time? Can we talk about the story?
Yes.
Jeff? Papa Jeff.
You've ate your vegetables. Let's have some dessert.
Okay. So because the dessert, the thing that is probably going to ultimately, when we put this on the list, and we're not just going to dump it down with Arabian Nights, is the story part of this game. Because honest to God, folks, the things that happen in this game. So you guys went in pretty good detail in the original episode right up to the point where Claves died. I would just like to say that sequence is 8 minutes long of her dying, and the thing that you didn't really convey, or if you did I forgot, is the fact that she is soliloquying herself in a very William Shatner-esque manner, and the body of that soliloquy is literally just clips of things that happened, honest to God, 5 or 10 minutes ago, plus the other 5 minutes of dialogue total that she was tertiarily involved with in the game. And then she collapses on the floor and her eyes close, and it's like, wow, how somber. And then her eyes just fucking open again, and she keeps going, and then they close again, and then they open again, and then she keeps going, and then she dies. And that is Kojima's shit. Like, that is incredible. That is like Sniper Wolf dying levels of shit. Like, it's I could not. I played about another hour of the game. I was like, you know what? I want to leave the memory alone right there. Like, nothing's gonna top that. It turns out a couple things at the ending might, but like,
a couple things they do. Like after that sequence, you get some stuff in is it Walt? No, Baroque.
It goes from this 8-minute death scene to a slideshow, a very slow, and like. To be super clear, it's literally just kind of watercolors of various European buildings while a slow text scroll happens talking about, like, Chopin's life. Then the scene of a woman in the woods. And then the next thing you see is children on a boat.
Yeah, and it's Allegretto. Well, it sure took you long enough. Beat Redo. What a relief. I'm glad to see you all got back here safely. No context. No cuts. I mean, there are cuts. No switches. No, like, meanwhile. Nothing. Just, like, hard cut, hard cut, hard cut. Go. Perfect. No notes. This game is so much better than it is this way.
So, the broad political machinations going on in this world, you've got Prince Crescendo and his fiancée, whose name, Serenade, and she's a dog named Minuet, and they are the royalty of another country, the name of which I've forgotten. Let's call it France. They are trying to work out some sort of peace deal, and there's this incredible cutscene where Friedrich Chopin is sitting on a couch with 3 children talking to these monarchs, and they are basically just openly discussing, like, yeah, we could have killed this guy in a decapitation attack, this guy being Waltz, the evil anime shitboy candidate of our hearts. Yes, boy, just tie it up in a bow, hand and glove, baby.
Fucking giant crown,
tiny little body. His giant crown with the bow, and then his like wizard sword that's got the star behind.
Yeah,
he looks like a magical girl, but as a boy prince man.
And it's Liam O'Brien doing basically the polar opposite of his Illidan Stormrage or his Caius Ballad voice, where he's just like, yes, we will tax them and make mineral powder.
I'm doing this not because there's a good reason, but because I feel good when I hurt people.
Because I am a bad, bad boy.
He has the same motivations as Kefka. Yeah.
I need a little spanking. Don't I, Legato?
God. So anyway, they're like, yeah, we could kill this guy, but my fiancé is like, maybe that's a bad idea. And then there's this brief change in the music that lasts for about 2 seconds, and Prince Crescendo's like, I wonder. And then this fucking Serenade's like, what do you mean? And he's like, it's nothing. And Chopin is just like, I don't know, war is definitely all bad, and on the one hand, killing this guy would suck, but on the other hand, war is bad. But on the other hand, killing is all bad. So maybe the moral equivalent should just be don't kill a Hitler. That would be better, because if you just hope nothing will happen, maybe nothing will happen. That's good. Like, it's this incredible, shitty, false equivalency bullshit scene, meanwhile, magical girl in, like, arts and crafts skirt and a pirate hat, and a child who can't put his arms down farther than 45-degree pitch from his sides are just sitting on a couch next to him, just being like, Well,
of course war is bad.
I don't understand. Maybe war is bad.
Every time Salsa comes on the scene,
I need my
Salsa is the Poochie of this game.
That's a good Simpsons reference.
Anytime Salsa isn't on the screen, the fans should be wondering, where's Salsa? I get it. Again, it adds to this game might actually have been intended for children at some point, I guess. Or I just don't care for this specific brand of anime nonsense.
Hey, at least she's a child character that's not like, I'm actually 1,000 years old. Isn't that funny?
Yeah,
even though she's like a weird elf.
To put it directly, there's not a weird, like, lollification of this character at any point. Like, congrats.
Congratulations. This game is not creepy with the sex stuff.
Yeah, it's really not. I guess there's not really, again, adds to a child-friendly vibe.
On a scale of anime to anime.
Yeah,
I watched an episode of High School DxD the other day.
Okay.
And let me tell you, if you want full-on naked boobs in your anime, So my scale is
With a
probably
plot.
broken.
Other people will be having a serious policy about like murder and death and political intrigue, and she will walk in and be like, she is the wacky anime sound effect generating device of the plot or whatever.
You can tell because
that's
she's
a
got
nice
a pirate hat.
I'll take it.
I'm the comedic relief character. And then Beat is like, I am a child,
being short,
and I am
gets
fighting
under
with
his skin.
you.
Oh man, every time she calls Poca short, and he does
Beat
not
short.
like it, Beat short, it's so good, because he's got that, I'm a pissed off anime boy look.
I'm a tsundere.
There's a scene that comes up not long after this, which is, let's say maybe my third or fourth thing that happens in this game, favorite-wise. Crescendo is by the window, and a dove flies in, presumably the one that Claves had. And there's a scroll on this little dove's leg. His fiancée, Serenade, sees the dove. Is like, oh, what's going on? And he's like, oh, definitely nothing. It's all good. Takes this little scroll pouch on this dove's leg, which is how messages were sent in olden times, and unscrolls it. Now, I can't imagine this looked as ridiculous as it did when this text was written, probably in, like, kanji or whatever, but the way they went in and doctored it so it's in English, it is preposterous, because he unfurls this note, which is about a foot-long scroll that's about a 1-inch tall, and it just says in, like, chiller font, basically, like, your fiancée Serenade is an evil spy and she is bad. And he pretty much unfurls this right in front of her. Like, there's no way she can't see this giant 100-point font on this scroll.
But also,
and she's just
also, of course she is.
I mean,
like,
yeah, obviously.
Her brother's Count Waltz. Like, duh.
Yeah.
No shit. Yeah. I mean, this, like, that's amazing.
I laughed so hard at this.
Yes. Did you appreciate the love quadrangle between Jazz and the only other girls of age?
It was good. That was a good.
Because Jazz is the only man who's not dying of tuberculosis above the age of 16.
He is not a wispy ghost man or a literal child.
And there are 3 women over the age of 20, and so there must be a love quadrangle because that's how that works. So Claves is Jazz's first love interest, then Falsetto has a crush on Jazz, and then in one cutscene, Viola is like, "Hi Jazz, what's up?" And, like, she acknowledges him, and I'm like, oh, she must have a crush on him because anime. And the next conversation she is playing cards with Beat and Salsa. And she says, forget it, I'm in last place again. And Beat's like, what are you talking about? That's not true, you're in third place. Salsa's like, you're right, third place is a bronze medal, not bad at all. And Viola's like, hey, are you two trying to make me angry? I'm third place out of 3 players. You can't tell me that deserves a bronze medal. No, we didn't mean it like that, Salsa. Come on, say something to her. Yeah, Beat's right. Without you, old lady, we wouldn't. What? And then Viola says, a little bit longer, where is it? She says, like, well, I belong in third place. I'm always in third place. And that's how the game lets you know she has a crush on Jazz.
But don't you remember the part where Jazz asks her who her special someone is, and she gets flustered, and she says it's her pet Arco, and Jazz is disappointed.
Womp womp.
'Cause that's funny.
Yep.
So, here's, as I said, I watched Eternal Sonata, the movie, on YouTube. Another one of us finished it. Gino, you basically played through the whole thing. Braden, how far did you get?
I got, like, halfway. I got to chapter 4, I think.
Okay, so let's all...
I'm number 1!
Yeah, so let's all be honest with ourselves. Beyond... From literally the time that Claves dies and these couple little political intrigue things, does anything of particular comedic value or interest happen?
Yes.
Okay.
So one thing that jumped out to me is when you visit the Tree of Foretelling.
Oh, God, that scene, right.
Whatever the hell that tree is. The Fortune Tree. Let me just Control F Fortune.
It's this magical place that's been just waiting for fucking Poca. And it's like, I've been waiting for you for hundreds of years. It's like, this one spot, like, you just exist here for her? This is it?
Yeah, so this woman shows up. She says, Polka can draw a fortune from that. Polka will draw a fortune from that box. And if it's a bad fortune, you will tie it to that tree. And that will, save you from bad luck. And so she draws a fortune, and the fortune's blank. And this tree is covered in fortunes, and this woman says, it's Polka, I was expecting you. And she's like, how do you know my name? Why do you know I'm going to be here? And the game seems to imply that there's some sort of time loop going on because there are many fortunes tied to this tree, and the tree never ages and it never changes, and Polka always is the person who has to draw the fortune, and then they just go nowhere with the time travel.
And this is also one of the few times in which Frédéric Chopin, who's supposed to be the main character, is openly recognized as being the out-of-place man where this game takes place in his dreams. Like, this old characters that recognizes him.
Elderly lady says, yes, I knew very well. You see, it's my job to witness whether or not she ties that fortune to the sacred tree. The sacred tree, the tree right behind the fortune. There's all this foreshadowing. It's like, it stood in this land for thousands of years. It never grows any taller, but it never withers. That's why people call it the sacred tree. Now, Polka, go ahead, draw your fortune. You'll know soon enough whether I've told you the truth. Like, it's playing with something here. Like, it's trying to imply some sort of time loop. It's trying to imply that there's something going on with Polka.
Well,
but it's not told well, and it doesn't actually pay off.
I mean, I feel like that does lead to kind of what happens in the end with, like, vortexes and alternate dimensions at the end.
And this is already kind of... Yeah. They fiddled with this time concept earlier with the rock sequence, where Allegretto picks up a rock on a beach, goes up to the Tenuto village where Polka is hanging out, and she is basically... content warning, I guess. It's just like, what if I just kill myself, like, right now? And he's like, don't. And she's like, okay. Which is weird. And she's like, how about I just throw this rock I've had forever instead? And she throws it. And he's like, it's funny, I just found your rock earlier. Here, I'll give it to you. And she's like, dumbfounded because, oh my god, it's the same rock. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god, it's the same. But how could he have found... But then who was Phone? Who was Phone? And it's like, there's Wibbly, which is like maybe a bad thing to do writing a story, especially if you're 10 hours in or whenever that happens into a 30-hour story. It's just like, you know what would really help this along? Time travel.
I guess I was just expecting the game at some point to, like, comment on its weird time stuff and make, I don't know, do the anime turn where they're like, the time travel stuff. Here's bullshit excuse for why it works. And they didn't.
Aliens were behind it the entire time.
There's just so many examples of the game having these weird story elements that go nowhere, like the Agogo Queen Mother and, like, the Agogos in general.
Yeah. Oh, we need to talk about the
Can we
Agogo
talk about
Queen
you
Mother.
getting eaten by the Agogo Queen Mother? Because that's a good
Tell
scene.
us all about it.
So, do you remember Fugue, Jeff? The shit man with the monocle?
The Johnny Young Bosch villain character.
The god damn it, the Final Fantasy IX lady that you fight like 3 times as your, like, gear check, level check character.
Beatrix.
Yeah. I'm not trying to actually be a dick. I just forgot her name.
Kind of that, yes. So, but Fugue is eviler, and you fight him again.
He has a monocle.
And he's a
and
dick.
He's like, I'm going to murder you because you're annoying me.
Yes.
Well, they call him a 3-eyed freak, and that really upset him.
The first time you fight him, he's the hardest boss in the game up until that point. The second time you fight him, he's more manageable. After you beat him the second time, the Agogo Queen Mother shows up and starts getting, like, angry because of... Well, he tries to, like, kill or kidnap the Agogo Queen Mother, and after you beat him, he insults the Agogo Queen, and then she eats him, and then turns angry and evil because she's eaten an evil man, which is incredible. It's so good.
I'm more... Yeah, that's what we call Vor.
Yeah.
Very popular on DeviantArt. I was more saying, like, the Agogos in general just are, like, one of the worst managed parts of this story. They're such a huge crux, especially whenever the game decides, oh, wait, this game's actually about Polka. Let's have these weird, like, Will-o'-the-Wisp things, which is just such a weird visual choice, like, to have them, like, be these little balls of, like, Will-o'-the-Wisp energy.
I love the way they introduced Astras in this game, because it's our, like, honest to God, maybe, like, 15, 16, like, it's halfway through the game at least, where Polka is walking around and then more or less just, like, faints suddenly and has this flashback where she's talking to her mom, who basically said she's gonna have to kill herself one day, in the first 10 minutes of this game, by the way. And she's like,
Yep.
oh, by the way, there's a thing that glows inside of you, and it's called an Astra, and it's in your soul or your heart or something. Okay, bye. And then they go back to the game. Like,
Yeah.
what was that?
That's how you tell stories.
It's incredible. Jesus Christ. How?
Yeah, and like every time they mention Astras or Agogos, like they've got. I will say the amount of jargon that this game has is not as high as some other JRPGs, but boy, do they use those terms to death. Like they talk about Agogos and Astras and mineral powder. Like those are the three jargons that they got, but they're gonna just use them. Every sentence after they've introduced
the
them.
thing about the Astras is they don't really kick in until that scene in which Polka passes out. That's chapter 4. So we've gone chapters 1 through 3, and even like mid chapter 4, the Sharp Mountains.
We find out
And then
there's
it's
a
like,
crystal
nope,
in your
yeah,
heart.
here's another proper noun. Blop.
There's a crystal in your heart that it powers you, and Polka's got a really good one. Almost like she's the crux of this whole thing.
And then once we save Polka, it's not like it's something that we keep talking about. I mean, at best, it's that when we're in chapter 5, Allegretto talks to what is their name, Solfigi in Tenuto Village, and she asks
Polka's
him,
mom.
"Do you know what Astras are?" And he's like, "They're fairy tale stuff." And then that's it. That's it until chapter 6 when Polka passes out again.
And then you feed her the soul of Fugue, and it heals her.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible.
Yeah, so like I think that those are the big things, and then towards the end of the game, you get some amazing Count Waltz stuff. Crescendo and Serenade decide that the way to avoid a war with Count Waltz and his country is to go to Forte on foot by themselves to turn themselves over as hostages so that they, I guess, get killed, but that appeases his bloodlust, and so he lets their country go. Like, it's really terrible. Like, this guy's in charge of a country, and he is doing a piss-poor job of negotiating. He would not take out the opposing leader, but he will gladly sacrifice himself. It's real anime hero logic. And so you follow him into Forte territory. You find Count Waltz, and Count Waltz is like, I don't care about you, head of state. What I actually want is this girl right here named Polka, because she makes Agogos glow bright, and bright Agogos make mineral powder really strong. And he kidnaps, like, you fight over basically Polka. He explains that he wants to conquer Baroque. He doesn't accept any surrenders. And people keep trying to negotiate with him when he's very clearly not a rational actor.
Yes.
And after you defeat him, he gets an Agogo, he puts it in a drink, and his, like, crappy courtier, legato, it becomes a dragon.
Just feeds it to him in a
An evil
milkshake,
dragon.
and he's like, you will drink this right now. And he's like, I guess I have literally no agency or choice. Glug, 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 glug. Like, just an incredible little sniveling shithead. But, yeah, then he turns into a big scary monster.
Yeah, it's great. It's, what would you like me to do, my lord? Drink all of that medicine immediately. But, Count Waltz, we haven't finished the testing yet. This is not a request, Legato. Do it, or do you intend to disobey me? But, my lord, drink it. He's just the worst head of a frat that you've ever seen. Count Waltz.
Drink it. Yeah.
Nicely done. I expect nothing less from my second in command.
Well, here's a fun fact. When you had to fight the Ruined Body, I like the name of that. Me and Jeff, we just fought the Ruined Body, but because your versions of the game needed to be harder, you had to fight Ruined Body and Count Waltz.
Yeah.
What?
Yep.
Yeah.
By the way.
It's just a 3-on-1 fight for us.
Oh, cool. I had to fight the hardest enemy in the game twice. Count Waltz, if you mistime any button presses, just insta-kills you.
Yeah, Count Waltz isn't in this battle.
And he also knows to run around behind you, which is super cool, so you can't block at all. Yeah, Count Waltz he's terrible. And once he turns his second in command into a dragon, that dragon then blasts a hole in reality, and you chase him into what appears to be the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You then spend a bunch of time talking to ghosts who have died of taking mineral powder and becoming magic users, and their souls are trapped in purgatory forever. And they all talk about how, I just had a cold one day, and then I took mineral powder, and I started shooting magic out of my hands, and I knew it was the end for me. And, like, one of them's at a cafe hitting on a girl spirit, and they're just floating orbs of blue and red. And you have to go through another terrible dungeon, and at the top of the terrible dungeon, after all that, you get to have a conversation with Count Waltz, where everyone gets to say their piece about Count Waltz. And boy, oh boy, the things they say.
It's the Elegy of the Moon distortion is what they call it, but it's basically a rip in space and time, like just literally rip a portal into space. Oh boy, and then the things that they say, Gino. Did you write them down?
I'm looking for the section on the script with all of this, because they basically tell Count Waltz, like, why are you doing this? And he's like, 'cause I hate everyone. 'Cause I'm a little shit boy. And they're like, well, what if, we surrendered? I don't want surrender. I want people to remember me forever. And then I think Allegretto's like, the people who you love will remember you in their hearts. And he's like, no, that's just a foolish kind of love, and everyone will forget you when I kill you and everyone you've ever known. It's all just so good. Everything they say is so good, trying to convince him. And at the end of it, he just basically goes, no, what I really want is to dominate the world entirely forever, for all time. And it's like, well, I guess we gotta fight him then.
I guess. Womp womp.
I mean, hey, at least it's not the anime villain redemption arc.
Yes. And after you fight him and beat him, he's like, I see what we need to do now. Legato, kill everyone. Which leads you, like, he rips another hole in space-time. You walk out and the world is ruined. And then Chopin's like, I know what I must do now. I must kill all of you, my dream denizens.
Yeah, this is when Chopin realizes, this is my dream. Also, the solution to this ruined world is me to just delete you all, because it's time for me to die. Tuberculosis win.
Yeah, so when you fight him, did you know that there's a secret ending if you lose to him?
Yes, there is a secret ending.
What's the bad ending, ZP?
He just basically deletes the world, and then he dies. I didn't look it up specifically, I just know that there is a bad ending. Doesn't he just perform a concert and that's it?
He literally just kind of wakes up and goes to sleep.
He wakes up, he survives tuberculosis.
Yep. What?
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, the bad ending is he survives.
Because you've altered the timeline. You see, the Chopin Society was probably like, no, you can't not kill him. So it, like, I'm halfway joking, but I'm not really joking. I bet they're like, he has to die. You can't fuck with that. And they were like, what if we had it as a bad end? And they were like, what the hell is a bad ending? And they had to like explain RPG and anime tropes to them. Basically, it would be like, right, so
I want to be the person at the Polish Historical Society who had to go over this game and like be like, yeah, no, you nailed it.
I really want
these PowerPoints are amazing.
I choose to believe that when they talked to the Chopin estate, because they did, about this game, they were the ones who were like, what if it's an anime world? Like, they wanted to make a game about Friedrich Chopin and his, like, 16-year-old, like, great-great-great-great-great-great-grandniece was like, could he be a pretty anime
they're just
boy?
sitting there in Krakow, and they're just like, right, what about an isekai angle? Okay, we'll have, like, a little boy, and he's kind of like a Tidus. He's just constantly asking questions, like, what is taxation? Like...
Yeah, of course.
Well, okay, let's say... Well, so he recovers from tuberculosis. What happens when you beat him? Why, he screams in agony, falls down to the ground. And
dies.
Then after he says the name of his sister, Polka comes up to him and is like, oh, we sure did beat you. Gonna touch you, say thank you for all of these wonderful gifts. I guess it's time to jump off the cliff.
Yeah, there's no explanation.
YOLOs.
She's just like, well, my mommy told me when I was little that one day I'd have to jump into the sea, so I guess it's that time.
And she jumps over the cliff.
She jumps off the cliff.
Allegretto's like, yo, Polka, didn't we talk about how you're not going to jump off the cliff? Please don't jump off the cliff.
But also, like, why would you jump off the cliff? Why?
But,
Because
they killed Chopin which I guess is what. So I guess the game world is his tuberculosis.
The tuberculosis
was game.
You the whole time.
And then so we kill Chopin. We got so much going here. So she jumps over the cliff.
Well, so we need to understand, Chopin is making a choice. He can choose to wake up and live his life, or die so that the dream world can live forever.
Right.
And he now thinks that the dream world is cooler than his real world, and he wants to see all these people.
I wrote down what Allegretto says to Chopin. It's like, no, that's not it. It isn't a dream at all. It's real. And I don't know what, but I have to do something. And then Frederick gets up and agrees, perhaps this is no longer just a dream. And then we realize that Polka's dead. Oh, no, it can't be. Not Polka. She falls into the abyss. And boy, howdy, we transition back to the real world as Polka falls through this dark abyss. And we go back to the real world where Frederick Chopin is slowly dying. And then he dies. He's dead.
And they mark
not
the time.
Before a credit roll happens, right?
There's just so much. So first off, I found one of Count Waltz's great lines. I just want to read it real quick. Such a fool. I don't care about vague, fleeting memories. You see, what I really want is to be adored and admired for eternity. Just a trifle, really. It's such a good... Oh, he's so terrible. But I love at the end here where Polka is jumping off the cliff. She says, was this fate? And she says, no, this was a choice I made. I'm choosing this with my own agency. And it doesn't... How? Why? I must do this, and it's for a person that means the most to me. My life is nothing compared to his. Doing this is easy if it's for him. She doesn't say who it's for. She jumps off a cliff, and then as she's falling, I think she says, thank you, everyone. I didn't last very long. This is the most fun I've ever had in my life. If I blow him a kiss, I wonder, will it reach him up there? I hope so. I really do. She falls into darkness, and then, we get Chopin saying Amelia that he's never forgotten his sister in all of his life. And how Polka's like basically his sister reincarnated, and so he kills himself so that she can have a life because he always felt bad that she died young. And this whole dream is him trying to give his dead sister the life she never had. If I'm reading it right,
that's very logical.
Wow.
My dear Polka, in this world that has been set free from my dreams lies the path that you've chosen to follow. The time has come for you to once again choose the path I believe in. Remember when he then becomes a ghost and plays piano over his own deathbed?
Mm-hmm.
And then some woman who's unnamed sings opera in front of him for a while?
And we don't know who she is in
so
his life.
in a YouTube description, I don't remember if that was either his sister or a woman that he had fancied, not the George Sand person, but a different other woman. But it's a very specific reference to someone, and by God, I should have written it down. Editor's note, this was particularly fun to look up. The character who appears in the ending cutscene and sings with Chopin is Delfina Potoka. To quote directly from the Eternal Sonata fandom wiki, Delfina Potoka was a Polish countess and a student of Friedrich Chopin in her youth. She maintained a friendship with Chopin, and the Little Dog Waltz was composed in her honor. That is a piece of music that is alluded to earlier in the game. So, there you go. It's not his sister. Should be noted, there's not a ton of YouTube videos that really kind of dig around in, like, the meaning of any of this shit. There are a couple just, like, long play kind of things, but...
They're lost.
Yeah, like, this is kind of unmined, dare I say, mysterious territory in some sense. This game's got real mysterious energy. I think Thor might like this in some level.
Yeah.
On some level.
It is... Eternal Sonata is a strange duck full of fun.
It's a Jogo.
And then, yeah.
It's just how this is
Thor High Heels
edited.
impression.
How this I know we've talked about how this game needs an actual director because whoever was in charge of the directing did a bad. Because the last scene that we talked about was how, oh no, his sister's sad and now, his
girlfriend. It's unclear.
Girlfriend or student. I thought it was student. Anyways, smash cut, morning light, a mother and her young child taking a stroll in
Well,
flower
Polka falls
fields.
out of the sky, becomes a little girl, gets caught by her mom. Her mom starts walking. They start having the conversation about how Polka's going to have to jump off a cliff in the future. And then Chopin's voice cuts in, and
He won't let Polka die.
yes, he won't let the loop repeat itself. And so she gets called back up into their current time, and she's in the Christ pose, glowing in a she's earned the T pose for once, despite the fact she's been in it for this whole damn time.
Well, she's not quite T-pose because her elbows are bent. She's got the weirdest one of all.
That's true.
Like, everyone else,
Yeah.
it's just arms
Well,
out.
no, Viola's feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those feet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then Frederick continues. He gets like a 14-year-old version of Polka,
Mhm.
and that a 14-year-old girl, she must live. And he starts talking about flowers. And I think he's trying to use flowers as a metaphor, but he just talks about flowers a lot.
The flowers are the death light or the heaven's mirror, which is this flower that blooms at night. And Frederick and the mom say, "Do you remember? You said it was up to me whether I wanted to call them heaven's mirror or death lights." And then Polka's like, "Really?" And Friedrich and Polka say at the same time, "I'm allowed to choose? Well then, I make my choice right now." And Friedrich says, "I choose to call it heaven's mirror." So he's basically saying, me dying is cool. Like, it's okay. Death's okay.
I've come
Don't
to
be scared.
terms.
Yes, I accept death. And then, the Polka gets called back up. She rises from the grave. She lands. And then all of the flowers come back. And the world is set back to normal. And this is all cool and everything. But there are multiple other endings. Oh, did we have this? There's the caterpillar and the snail.
Yep. No,
Do you
so do
remember
you know how to get the caterpillar and the snail? You need to
Post-credits.
watch the credits and not click any buttons on your controller or your keyboard for 30 seconds. And then it will automatically play.
It's
So what is
bananas.
this?
Like, it's a...
This
It
is
is-
I posted it in the Discord.
I know,
it's
but
the
It's
snail
a
and the caterpillar.
children's... It's literally a
can watch it.
caterpillar and a snail.
It's
like
a
a
weird
It's good for you.
fable
Yeah.
about dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One day the caterpillar asked the snail, "Mr. Snail, you know many things. Could you tell me what kind of shape is the shape of life?" The snail nodded and answered, "Well, Mr. Caterpillar, I think that maybe life is red, like a ripe tomato." The caterpillar laughed happily and said, "No, Mr. Snail, I didn't ask about the color of life. I asked you about the shape." The snail nodded and pondered, and then he answered, "Well, Mr. Caterpillar, I think that maybe it has a sweet scent, like a pot of honey." And then it keeps going, and then at the end the snail nods and says, "Mr. Caterpillar, you already knew the answer. Happiness, disappointment, sorrow, anger, these are the sights, smells, sounds, and tastes, but life can take on many different shapes." The end. Thank you for playing. Roll credits. Boy, they had no bad idea in a brainstorm is what I feel about Eternal Sonata. If someone had an idea,
Gino,
they put it in.
We're not talking. We haven't even talked about how at the end, when you're done watching the credits, the game lectures you about the importance of life and never giving up.
Yeah, there's that awesome thing. There's an awesome post credits. I don't know if it's the New Game Plus, the New Game Plus, where all of the characters are like, "Is your world not as good as you'd like it to be? Well, why don't you do something about it? Get up off your butt. Start a revolution. Hey, do you ever think that it's too late for you to make a change in the world? It's not. You're still alive. So everything, you can do it." They literally are just talking at the player like, "Go, be the change you want to see in the world, champion. Kill."
I wake up every morning and I go fish abalone out of this freezing cold bay. If it's that video, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is that I think that the real, I put this in quotations, the real ending to this game is actually a really nice, touching scene. So after Child Polka tells her mom that I've heard this voice in my head and it's talking, and mom's all like, "I need to call a doctor." No, she's like, "Oh, that's the person for your Astra. Keep talking to him." Then like the Go-Go's glow around her, and then she turns into her. So she goes from 14 to her normal her, adult.
She goes
her.
from 6 to 14. 14's her
goes
old
6
age.
to 14, and then Allegretto just shows up, and then they're together.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
finds a way. So I guess Allegretto is also of age, and he didn't need magic to age him. Like all of the characters, I think, are still alive.
Is
It
it
seems she's-
metaphorical?
Well, it's been a time loop, clearly. Like, her jumping off of the end situation sends her back to the beginning again.
But then
as a child.
why is this a story about Chopin slowly dying of tuberculosis? Did the time loop start before or after he got tuberculosis?
So here's my attempt to make sense of the unintelligible. Chopin has been trapped in this dream for who knows how long. It has been recurring because he's dying of tuberculosis. Count Waltz is tuberculosis. He is dying. His mind is racked with this pain. He, in this loop, which is the final iteration of the loop, is near death, and at the end, instead of kicking the can down the road, he gives in and accepts death, which in this context allows this world to exist beyond his mind and become a world of its own. And so Polka jumps off to start the loop again, because her jumping off is what, like, she's the memory of his sister, and the memory of his sister is what's keeping him going, his love of his sister. So by jumping off and starting the loop again, she keeps him attached to the earth, but he basically accepts death so that her memory can live independent of him in this weird dream anime world. That is what I think is happening. So she gets called back at this final loop, back to the moment that everyone else was in. And the world just continues from that point on. So yeah, he accepts anime life. Anime is life, and then he's a ghost. That's my best shot. I can't do any better than that.
His spirit leaves his body, remember?
Yeah, and he plays the piano. A sweet piano, and
then
sings
I like to
opera.
interpret this snail and the caterpillar as, like, the game is telling a bedtime story for Chopin to finally go to bed.
I mean, very broadly, and this is pretty plain on its face, this story, like, for whatever its merits and however it wraps up, just is yet another one to be thrown on the pile of artworks that owe their entire existence to Zhuangzi, who, for those of you who are not in the know, he was a Chinese scholar, basically mystical figure, who wrote a book that is just named after himself, purportedly, allegedly, about 2,500 years ago, allegedly, which contains, among other kind of worthwhile things, the dream of the butterfly dream parable. The famous, I dreamt I was a butterfly and woke up and was like, shit, am I a man dreaming that I'm a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming I'm a man? What's the difference? It's playing in that same space, and I think a lot of, like, isekai, not even isekai, a lot of just anime owes its entire existence to Zhuangzi. And the snail and the caterpillar, I'm not for certain if that is contained in the text of Zhuangzi, but it may as well be, because it reads like that. It's got a very, like, parable of the monks and the elephant kind of thing, of, like, what's an elephant like, you know? Yep. It's like, oh, well, it's flat, and one thinks it's really round and hard, or one thinks it's very long and, like, hollow, you know? It's like, we're all trying to describe something, but it's just ephemeral and it's impossible. It's all based on perspective, right? It has that feel to it, which is fine. A lot of anime, frankly, kind of digs in that trench and winds up being perfectly cromulent, and I think this game would wind up being, like, cromulent and kind of forgettable. It's just that they hang on this Chopin thing right up to the bitter end.
Honestly,
the fucking vinegar strokes of this game, him playing a piano as a ghost with a woman that they don't introduce or explain at all. Again, it's describing the unknowable, but they're so committed to it. The story is what this game ultimately has, right? Like, unless you're very, very into kind of rote sub-Tales action RPG combat.
It is colorful. It came out at the right time. But yes, if you want some homeopathic Tales of or Star Ocean combat with this novel kind of, active time system that is not good enough to hold up a 40-hour RPG, they got you.
But instead,
but you're here for the metaphors and the every single thing that every single character says.
Boy, this is a game that I would love to watch. I wish I was you watching me play it and not the person playing it.
I also want to say I wish they would make another game like this. Where's
Yes.
I want the new Yume franchise
Yes.
to come back.
I want Abraham Lincoln to accept Anime
Yeah,
Heaven.
so they continued to co-develop stuff.
Oh right, it's Heaven's
Yeah.
Light. It's called the flowers are Heaven's mirror because this is the afterlife.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm looking this up. The director of this game, Hiroya Hatsushiba, this was the last game he is credited on. He was a programmer for Wolf Team and then Tri-Ace and founded Tri-Crescendo. So he said this was the first game he directed after being, the sound guy and the sound director for the Baten Kaitos games and Star Ocean games. And yeah, he is not credited on any other video games, so he's like, I did it. I directed the game. Fuck it, I'm out.
I had one goal. I got into video games to do one thing.
I really hope that's true. Man, that would make me so happy.
The last game Tri-Crescendo is credited on is that terrible Gundam Versus game that came out in 2017. Yeah. So that's unfortunate.
And I mean, prior to that, the only other thing that they solo developed was a Digimon game that came out on 3DS and Vita.
Oh, they worked on the DS version of Blue Dragon and Fragile Dreams.
Things Fragile Dreams has.
We should look
Fragile
at Fragile
Dreams feels like a spiritual follow-up to
this Brayden,
game.
Remember when someone wouldn't shut the fuck up about Fragile Dreams and Chicken Head?
Kept posting that fucking chicken head face, yeah.
I have two notes to conclude this before we rank this and then go to bed. The first note is just a simple pull from Wikipedia. It says in 2007, Eternal Sonata was nominated for the Best RPG Award at Spike Video Game Award Festival.
Oh, hell
but
yeah.
lost to something called Mass Effect. So imagine Samuel L. Jackson going up on stage and being like, the award for Best RPG goes to Chopin no Yume, Bell Tinkle.
Yeah!
Tinkle Bell? Trusty Bell, something
Trusty
like
Bell.
that. Anyway, yeah, like it. It'd be fucking incredible. The other one is just a simple question: who's the worst adult, Polka's mom or Chopin's doctor?
Ooh, Chopin's doctor. Well,
Chopin's doctor just being like, life is really about
it's like,
living.
don't you?
And then it's like, no, you're
like,
a fucking
don't you
doctor.
have anything else to do? For starters,
if he finds the dream more attractive than life, he might die right here. Could you give him medicine though? No? Okay.
It's incredible.
Yeah, so I would say so Polka's mom's terrible, but Polka's mom is like a neuron in the dying brain of Friedrich Chopin. The doctor ostensibly is a normal person with an accreditation out in the real world, just being called in to euthanize people, apparently. Like, he's just Dr. Kevorkian out here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that puts a pretty neat bow on it. Let's rank this game.
All right.
If you would like to play along with the home game, you can look at this list that's available online for free. That's right. At bit.ly. That's bit.ly/OTDE rank. That is OTDE as Oscar, T as in Thomas, Delta, Echo, rank.
I just did that, and I can confirm it works.
Yeah, that means I set it up correctly, finally. Good job, me. So, for those of you who want to play the radio game, let's work from bottom to top. So at the very bottom of our list, we have Aiden Chronicles the First Mage, followed by Secret of the Stars, then Draken, Revengers of Vengeance, The Lord of the Rings the Third Age GBA Edition, Arabian Nights, Quest 64, The Third Age Console Edition, Ace 3, then Soma Bringer, the top half of our list now, Bahamut Lagoon, Hybrid Heaven, Dragon Quest I, Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, Ultima 4, Ogre Battle 64, Quest for Glory, So You Want to Be a Hero, Grandia 2, the top three here, Grandia 2, Xenosaga Episode 1, Reveals Are Mocked, and the best game we've ever played, our favorite game of all time, nothing is even close, definitely is Suikoden. Continue to find this puzzling.
So
I would say we start in the
That
middle.
seems like a great thing to do. How we like this relative to Bahamut Lagoon. More?
I like more than Bahamut Lagoon.
Sold. Hybrid Heaven. I agree. It's worse than Hybrid Heaven.
I think it's better than
You
Hybrid
sons
Heaven.
of... Yeah, it's better than Hybrid Heaven. Dragon Quest 1.
It's better than Dragon Quest 1. Wait, really? You guys think that rudimentary baby's first JRPG is better than Eternal Sonata?
When
a
we
game
come
with actual
to the question of
values?
how much do I value conciseness, but this is probably a better video game than Dragon Quest 1.
Just play the 360 version, and then you get the conciseness.
I guess.
I don't know if it's that concise.
Yeah, the levels are still the same length.
I mean, if I just dealt twice as much damage, I would have beaten the game at level 30, and it would have been fine.
Nothing in Dragon Quest 1 made me laugh as hard. You know?
It's true.
Can you put a price on Claves' 12 death throws? Just muttering to herself about life and her boyfriend who you met 5 minutes ago?
What about the entire ending, Jeff? What about that ending?
This is better than Dragon Quest.
Let's try this on. Is it better than Fire Emblem? Maybe an easier question.
No.
No.
Counterpoint. Claves, now he'll never get over you.
Yeah, but Fire Emblem 1 is like the rare Famicom game that is still playable.
Yeah. It's fun, and also, as rudimentary as its story is, it has a story.
Okay.
And I know... Okay, Jeff, where do you stand? No. We can split.
I think this goes... I'm going to do it. I'm going to put this below Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon, and the Blade of Light, and above Dragon Quest 1, Eternal Sonata. I'm typing it right now.
Now, when we play Dragon Quest 3, we'll all be complaining to Jeff, you signed us up for an 80-hour game, you asshole!
This was good, Jeff.
That's what I do. I ruin people's lives. Gino... I'm just going to write ThatPinguino. There we go. Let's make it official. Congratulations to Eternal Sonata.
That does put Eternal Sonata above the line of mediocrity, right?
Yeah. This is a game you can play and
there's
not feel
a lot
terrible.
of ways you can get above the line of mediocrity, right?
There are ways people can enjoy this game.
I think if you were to watch all of the cutscenes of Hybrid Heaven, that's a bad way to experience Hybrid Heaven, right? Like, I don't know. Just the plot alone, almost literally the plot alone, gets this one as high as it does.
Yeah. Puts on for City, for sure. Like, this game is bonkers, not so crazy. This game is perfect for, some sort of website to do some sort of long play series on.
Yeah.
For sure.
In terms of things being off the deep end, this is pretty off the deep end. So that's it. Congratulations to Eternal Sonata. You're in the middle third of this list, but you're the top of the middle third. So congratulations there. That's it. That's it for this episode. We aren't even going to have to go through the rigmarole of choosing our next game because that is already chosen. We'll be back in a couple weeks doing Might and Magic 6, The Mandate of Heaven for the personal computer. For those of you who have not quite yet gotten that started and want to play along in the home game, give it a shot. It turns out Might and Magic 6 is pretty fucking good.
I've played it for 20 hours, which is as much of Eternal Sonata as I've played. And I am having a far better time.
Yeah. I played Eternal Sonata also for 20 hours and I met the final boss.
You should check out Might and Magic 6, Gino. I think it'll have a lot of things you like. It's got... Anyway.
Got digitized actors.
Ooh.
It has old school Dungeons and Dragons style stat distribution.
There's a lot of opaque mechanics.
That doesn't matter. You can fly. Every time you cast a Wizard Eye spell, it goes, ah!
You have to be careful when you're walking down slopes, or you may get stuck in the air and have to restart the game. It's got a lot of good stuff. That's honestly the worst thing that's happened to me in that game. Hey, everyone, thank you for tuning into this installment of Off the Deep End. It's been great. Questions, comments, prayer concerns, inquiries at deep.lol. That is a great place to send those. We love podcast reviews. We will read those aloud. That is my promise to you.
As I've proven, I'll respond to your YouTube comments too.
For real, though. Yeah. Engagement is good. You're getting eyeballs to us, you eyeball getters. You getter of eyeballs. And hey, if you'd like to keep this show, this mothership floating, if you'd like to keep Gino just rolling and whatever he rolls in,
Hey, motherfucker.
Yeah, there's a Patreon, patreon.com/deeplistens. That is patreon.com/deeplistens. Any dollar amount greatly appreciated, and that will get you access, as mentioned, to the Deep Listens Discord, where you can send complaints and prayer concerns to us in real time, in addition to games that'll go to the slush pile that we will draw from for future RPGs here in the year of fan requests.
Special thanks to the person who did the new art for
yeah, by the way.
Gino was the person.
Shout outs to, let me get Tyler's information, because I have the shout out for him. I asked what he would like to. So if you like the art that we have, you can hit up Tyler Orban at tylerorbin.net, TylerOrbin.net. He's a freelancer. He's available as per your content.
It's available, huh?
At very reasonable rates.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I've watched these come along, and honestly, even the draft stuff we were getting was like very good. So couldn't be happier with how these turned out. Honestly, I love them both. Love our award too. Very excited to start throwing that around.
You'll see that in the coming times. Oh boy, they're gonna love it.
Special shout out to SuperSex420 for providing us with the hit podcast theme music Halfway, a track that is available along with other great songs from SuperSex420 on Bandcamp.com, an Epic property, I believe. See you next time, and remember, there's no such thing as cheating in a single-player game, and that extends to Eternal Sonata. This episode of Off the Deep End was recorded and edited on the traditional and ancestral territory of the Nisqually or Nisqually people, who have lived on and stewarded these lands and waters since times immemorial.